It was a very great blow for my grandfather to be invalided out of the fire service. It had been his life for 22 years, but he made the transition by getting a job at the Ilford Isolation Hospital as a fire officer, and in this way he was able to use all his fire service knowledge in order to keep patients and staff safe at the hospital. But before he got the job as a fire officer at the isolation hospital, he had also had a go at trying to make a life for himself and his family in the Isle of Wight. My grandfather's younger sister Daisy and her husband lived on the Isle of Wight, and they managed to get a job for my grandfather as a handyman and gardener with some members of the family that owned the Muse Brewery on the Isle of Wight. My grandfather loved fishing, and he loved going to the seaside to relax, like many East Enders who had grown up in the City of London in the East End. He loved going to the seaside, and the Isle of Wight was one of his favourite places, and he loved to go fishing off of Grandad Beach. But when the job in the Isle of Wight didn't work out, they decided to pack up their things and go back to West Ham, and my great-grandparents found my grandparents a flat to live in above a fish shop in West Ham. So they travelled back on the motorbike and sidecar with all their possessions in the van, but unfortunately the van broke down and they had to stay overnight in somewhere, I think, like it was Plymouth, I think. And when they finally reached West Ham the next day and they drove into the road where the fish shop was, where they were going to be living above, all they found was rubble, and the fish shop had been hit by a bomb in the middle of the night. So it was a good job that my grandparents and my mother hadn't gone there that evening, because they might not be alive. And they ended up moving in with my great-grandparents, but also at that same house was my grandfather's sister Julia and her husband Jim and their 3 daughters. So all 3 families for a time towards the end of the Second World War all lived together in one house, so it was very, very crowded, and all their furniture was in the front room until they all managed to find homes. Now being in the fire brigade gave my grandfather a wonderful opportunity to better himself in life. He was able to buy a motor car, he had his beloved motorbike, and he was able to buy a house outright with the money that he earned. And he certainly did, through his career in the fire brigade, better not just his own life but the lives of the people who came after him. And I will tell you more about my grandfather's story in the last part of this video series.